Are you manifesting a specific person that you would label stubborn, you would label anxious attachment, avoidant style behavior, personality disorders or mental health disorders? They've had this childhood, they have this past, they're the kind of person who, once they've made up their mind, that's it, they told me once an ex, always an ex, and they're never going to come back. How is this going to turn around? All these different labels and these different personality traits that we apply to our specific person that suggest to us, well, this is it, this is what they've told me, this is how they are, this is set in stone, so how are we going to change this? I know from my last video as well, my success story that I posted up on Friday, it also encouraged a few people to come forward who are also in similar situations, who have stated that they're dealing with avoidance and anxious attachments and all the rest of it. So let's discuss this in this video, okay? And hopefully this is going to bring you some clarity in understanding how this works. I'm going to bring in from my own personal experience, as I always do, and I'm going to bring in from the experience of one of my very, very close friends who manifested his specific person. He is not a fan of or understands the law in any way, does not use the law, is not spiritual in any way whatsoever, but inadvertently was unconsciously creating his ideal version of his SP without even realizing it. You see, we were born to do this, and I'm going to share it all here. So first up, I'm Athena Raven. I'm a mental health and manifestation life coach here to empower and inspire you on your manifestation journey. If you're enjoying the content, if you're finding it helpful, I really do appreciate you taking the time to like, subscribe, click that bell icon as well so you never miss a beat. I'm posting out at least twice a week now, just to keep you informed and to help support you as much as I possibly can. So how many of you are dealing with an SP that you would deem anxious, avoidant? I don't like all of these labels. I do not enjoy these labels because they're essentially, that's all they are. We have labeled our specific person with these personality traits. Why? Because we have a perception of them. We've had an experience of them that would suggest this. We have translated some of their behavior and have attached these labels. And of course, in attaching these labels of narcissist and avoidant and all the rest of it, what do you think you are going to see more of? What are you expecting to achieve? You're putting them essentially in a state of being and keeping them there under these labels. But no one and nothing is set in stone, and we have to trust with our higher self. You know that imagination is the cornerstone to all creation, is the source of all creation. There is nothing that you cannot experience in imagination, and therefore if imagination is where everything stems from, then it stands to reason what you are experiencing in your imaginal act you can therefore have expressed in your 3D reality, because your 3D reality, everything that is that you can observe, everything that is here is dead, it's done, it's finished manifestation. And perhaps in the beginning, I know when I met my very, very first love, my very first SP, that I've shared the story with you guys numerous times on this channel, he had addiction issues, and so in terms of his personality and ability to fully commit, he was avoidant in many, many ways. It was up and down all the time. I didn't really know where I stood. I always came second place to his addictions, and it was a very difficult relationship at the time. Now, of course, when we broke down, I still had this overwhelming desire to have an ideal relationship with him, and I wasn't going to manifest that version of him back. I didn't want to experience the person who was a liar, a cheat, thieving from me to support his drug habits and putting drugs ahead of me. I didn't want to experience that again. And a lot of people would say to you, as I'm sure you've heard this before, I'm sure your friends, your family, in some cases probably said to you, why are you bothering with this person? Why are you still hanging on to them? You should move on, you know, find someone else. They're never going to change. And all of these different labels. And I've discussed this before in some of my older videos, that, well, we have a desire because the possibility to realize that desire in our 3D experience exists. And although human version of us, limited version of us, cannot fathom how this is possibly going to come to be, how is this going to change, we can trust when we come into the law that my higher self knows. Why do I have this desire? My desire was to experience a loving, committed relationship with this specific person who I loved and adored. And despite all of these flaws, despite what I had previously encountered with him, I knew, my higher self knew, that the ideal version of him existed because that desire was within me. And so that tells me that ideal version is in existence. I know that people change, people grow. You're not the same person that you were 6 months ago or a year ago. So why do we label them with these labels and assume that they're going to stick with these labels, that they're forever going to be stubborn, they're forever going to be of the belief that once an ex, always an ex, I don't go back to exes, they're forever going to be narcissistic in some way, or whatever we're trying to put in the way of our manifestations. It's really interesting how this is all shaped by our perception, our consciousness. And when we become aware of this, when you're coming across the law, and a lot of you come across the law due to specific person manifestation, right? That's our driving force, some strong emotional heartbreak or trauma that puts us into this road of self-discovery. It's not a bad thing. But you believe, your core, your gut intuition is telling you that this can happen. So we have to put aside that logical, rational thinking mind. We have to put aside, when we come into this community, that the old way of thinking is the way, that it's all about the 3D and manipulating the 3D and just taking everything that is in our world now, accepting that as this is it, taking it as face value and getting stuck in this loop. But whatever's in your 3D, whatever you can observe, is dead, it's old, it's done manifestation. So that version of my specific person, this is a done manifestation based on my perspectives. The reason why I attracted someone in the first place who was avoidant in some way, who had these addiction issues with addiction, who was cheating on me and stuff. The reason I drew this into my life, this experience into my life, he was the messenger, is because it was because of myself. This is not about self-blame. This is not you're doing something wrong and you deserve to be treated this way. Please do not take it as that, but just try to understand that, okay, my concept of self, I had very low self-esteem at the time. I was not believing in unconditional love. I think I would go for guys who are maybe had these sorts of issues because in some way I thought I could help them. Perhaps that was giving me some sense of value and purpose in relationships, thinking that if I help them, if I love them, if I nurture them, then they'll love me back. And it never worked out that way, you know. And there was all sorts of things that I was dealing with, concepts of myself with regards to the version of me that experiences relationships, never felt safe and secure, never felt that she was worth the full commitment. I don't know what it was, but I was very young back then, still learning about myself, still growing, and I'd shaped myself based on things I'd experienced in my childhood. And these abandonment wounds just followed me around, and there we go. I meet someone who's this way, and then another relationship where there's some traits here as well. And that's why we notice this recurring pattern. Like I've said before, you date the same person but essentially with a different face, and we'll all notice some sort of a pattern in our relationships. So it's about breaking out of this cycle by realizing that, okay, I don't know how this is going to change, but my higher self knows. My gut intuition, in my heart and soul, I knew that he was capable of being a better person. He was capable of getting off drugs. He was capable of being fully committed, of being there for me, of being supportive, having this codependency rather than me giving all the time and being drained. He was capable of being loyal and loving. I just knew that on an intuitive level. I could imagine it. I could feel it. I could see it within myself. Remember, imagination is not just about your visuals. Maybe you're just feeling it within this new version of them. That's why you desire it. You don't desire the old version that's an avoidant and all the rest of it. You're desiring something else here. Otherwise, why would you want for that experience? None of us want this experience of hot and cold, don't know where you stand, being picked up and dropped the next minute, being gaslit. We don't want this experience, but you want this specific person because maybe on some level you know, you believe, you felt in the better version of them. Maybe you've even experienced that already in the beginning of the relationship. But of course, as I've discussed before, once we get into a relationship with someone and we start to fall for them, this person starts to become really important, then we shift, depending on ourselves, we shift our concept of self, and we start to have these worries and insecurities. And that's when inadvertently we start to pinpoint certain behavioral traits of theirs and label it with something and focus and hone in on the negative behaviors. And then we amplify this and we magnify it, and we manifest more and more of this until we've manifested the complete breakdown of the relationship, or the third party, or just completely being ghosted, dismissed, just dropped just like that, you know. We've all encountered this. So it's not about them. It's always about self. How are you viewing yourself? How are you viewing yourself in relation to relationships in general? And how are you viewing them and yourself in relation to them as well? This relationship, when you're imagining it, you're imagining the end, which is, for most of us, that ideal setting of feeling very natural, very normal, very calm, very at peace, stable, safe, secure. These are the sort of sensations, the mood, the feeling that you are capturing. That's typically what all of us feel when we get into a long-term committed relationship. And so to establish that feeling, that mood, that safety, it would surely imply that this person is no longer avoidant or has commitment issues. Or, you know, I had to turn my sights away from the past and what I had experienced with my SP. I just focused and honed in on the version of him that I wished to experience, because I knew that that version of him already existed. If I'm experiencing the addict version and the thief and the cheater, then the opposite of that is in existence as well, right here, right now. Do I want to feel it? Do I want to experience it now? I can do in consciousness, and therefore in consciousness, once I've experienced it and I've made that my core, I've had my little dwelling place there, I've saturated my mind with this. Now my perspective on them has shifted. Now my focus and attention mostly goes on that version of them, and I'm not going to continue to label them with these issues. If you continuously label and see your SP as an anxious attachment or avoidant, you know, hot and cold, unreliable, stubborn, you continue to see them this way, that is the version of them that you are going to manifest back. So you might have established that, yes, they come back, you know, we're going to be together. But if you're not viewing them differently, if you're not viewing yourself differently, then you're going to go through the same pattern. And I've seen this numerous times with people who then eventually, when they come to me, it's like I've manifested my SP twice before, 3 times before, 4 times before. But it's always the same thing. It's always the same breakdown. Because if we haven't changed at the very core of it, and we haven't changed our perception of them, then of course this is what we're going to see more of. It's our perception that gives us this experience, our thoughts. This is how we were experiencing the world, through perception and thoughts all the time. That's it. That's all there is. So once you change your perception, you'll start to see more and more of these more positive attributes that I started to see with my first SP, for example. He got off drugs. Finally, he got a job, held down a job. He became really reliable, very dependable, loyal. The second relationship was like with a new person. I'm not saying that when he came back, I mean, you guys all know the bridge was not smooth sailing. He didn't just come back and was my knight in shining armor and, oh, it was all fantastic. No, it went through a process. The bridge was unfolding in its natural way, as 3D has to unfold in a natural way. But there it was. That's what I started to experience, that ideal, because that's what I believed in, because I understood how imagination creates. And that's where I went, in the knowing, in the acceptance of that, when I did imagine it, knowing that that's the version I'm going to experience. And I labeled everything else, all of his other behaviors, as, yep, it's still working in my favor. He's still conforming. I can see these improvements. Let me focus on the improvements rather than everything that was going wrong, you know? It's the same with one of my closest friends who manifested his specific person without knowing it. Like I say, he's got no interest in the law. He thinks it's all crazy stuff. And his specific person was someone they'd been together for quite a while, and she had some severe issues with commitment, perhaps a few toxic traits as well, a bit narcissistic, gaslight, hot and cold, like severely hot and cold, just completely avoidant. He was the one who was putting in all of the effort all the time, and it was just like smashing his head against a brick wall. Anyway, finally, this relationship came to an end. She just decided that suddenly everything that she thought she wanted, she was just going along with it for his sake. She wanted to end it, just completely broke things off. He, of course, was devastated. But he had this absolute conviction. So he didn't know. He was connected more to his higher self, his intuitive self, that knew what she was capable of, that knew that she's only acting this way because this is how it was for her in childhood. This is how it was. But I still see her coming back. He would say that to me all the time. I see her coming back. I know she's going to come back to me, because first up, he knew his worth. So he knew that he had put in so much into this relationship. There is no way that she was going to meet anyone else that measured up to him. That's what he felt. That's what he believed. That's what he knew. And he could have focused on the fact that, well, she's been this way for the longest time. She's stubborn as hell, so she's not going to make the first move, because that's exactly what he knew of her, and that's what he experienced of. That's all he experienced of her in the years that they were going out. It was always mostly him. It was always him making the effort, him going to her, him arranging things and holidays, him pushing for the next level of commitment and let's get engaged. Trying all the time. He was putting in and doing so much for her as well, and not really getting too much back. I know what's happening. Of course, I could teach him about the law and self-concept, and he doesn't want to hear it. That's fine. But when he did come away from this relationship, he got very clear on what he wanted. So he knew his worth. He knew what he deserved. He knew that he had skills to offer. He had a stable job. He had all of these things. Anyone would be lucky to be with him. He established this. And then he seemed to just naturally dismiss all of her past behavior, dismiss the fact that she was displaying some toxic traits, dismiss the fact that she was a bit lazy, that she was not forthcoming, dismiss the fact that she was cold for the most part and avoidant and had these commitment issues and this childhood trauma that shaped her to be this way. He just dismissed all of it and stayed true in the knowing that he said to me, I can see her coming back. I can see her reaching out. I can see that she's missing me. I just know. He would just say that. And I knew in my mind as I'm listening to him, because I'm always analyzing people's language. I do that with my clients as well to see where they're at. And I knew in my mind, I was like, yeah, she is going to come back. She is, you watch. And he had blocked her as well. For the most part, he had blocked her on WhatsApp and on the phone calls and stuff. And guess what? Literally like a couple of months, that's all it took. She did a complete 180, suddenly offering him everything that he wanted, saying that she made a grave error. She emailed him because she couldn't get hold of him any other way because she was blocked everywhere. But she found a way to get through, emailing him, stating that she wants to try again, that she'd made this mistake. She was extremely apologetic and sad about it. He said he saw her cry, which he never saw her cry. Unusual. He used to call her like a robot because she wouldn't shed a tear. She just seemed very cut off, emotionally cut off. But here she is, the crying, the vulnerable version that suddenly was full on wanting to commit. It's like she'd been shocked into this realization of, you know what, I can't live without you. And I'm really sorry I took you for granted all of these years. And bam. And now they're together and they're working on this relationship. And it's been very, very different. So do not place people in a state of being and leave them there. Do not apply these labels, because at the very core of it, we are not any of these labels that we attached. We are pure, shapeless, formless consciousness. And then consciousness became aware. And then consciousness became aware of being, of being something. And through the duration of our lives, we started to attach different labels to ourselves. and I am Athena, and I am this, and I am living here. I have anxiety, or I have these phobias. I have this, I have that. I have addictions. And it's only when we dissociate with these labels, when we go back to the very core of just being I am. Remember who you are. You are not these labels, neither is your specific person. It's all about your perception and your thoughts, which is coming from your concept of self and how you've shaped yourself. So your perception is not serving you at the moment. Change it, because I do that with my clients all the time. And what is so incredible about the process that we do when I challenge them on these things is that they have inadvertently turned a blind eye to everything that was going right. Even when things were great in the beginning, it's like somehow everything is good, but they're still, from their state of insecurity, their state of abandonment, their state of all of this jazz, they've suddenly honed in on the fact that, oh, but my SP forgot to do this, and oh, they took that little bit extra time to contact me, so that means that maybe they found someone else, maybe they don't love me anymore, maybe they're changing their mind. And that's what we fixate on, and that's what grows, and that's what continuously manifests until we keep on getting this worse and worse and worse, cold and cold and cold, broken down relationship. Where is your attention and focus going? Because it's always going on the ideal version of your specific person. Hey, if you can change, which you have done, then surely they can change too. We do them a disservice to keep them just stuck and limited. We're not limited to these labels, neither are they. Remember who you are at the very core of it. Where is your attention and focus going? Always ask yourself, what is your perception? What is it based on? Can we dismiss it? Can we just dismiss the old version of them and start to see the new? Even if we get them coming back into our lives and they're not fully conformed, or they've barely conformed, can we persist in our new perception, our new assumptions, until they become the fact? Because let's face it, all of us persisted in our previous assumptions. We had no fact for it, really. That's what I find with a lot of my clients. They had no facts that everything was going wrong per se, but they still focused in, they were still honed in on this assumption until it became a fact. So this is how we deal with these anxious attachments, stubborn, all the rest of it. People change their minds all the time. People grow, people heal. Okay, keep this in mind, and I really hope you found this video helpful. Thank you for joining me. Love you loads, and I'll see you in the next video.